Hello everyone, this is Chris Jamel at Exiton Interactive, and by the time that we are done with this video, we should be able to click on the forgot links, such as the forgot username, send in a request. We'll have that request go to the proper post method, and it'll send us back information telling us that the server has actually bound our request information correctly. You can probably tell here it's changing a bit on how we're handling this, because there is a little hiccup in attempting to do what I was doing previously, or going to do previously, which was, if you remember the URLs that we were using, we were going to have our authenticator here shown on our login page. We were going to then send a request to the forgot username endpoint, and then I was going to have the forgot username page handle the post and then request, and then show a view telling the user, check your email, blah blah blah. But there's, for whatever reason, that's not the way it works as far as the Razor pages are. So we'll see here at during the video. As usual, you can find a link to the article for this video in the description below. Alright, let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is modify our Authenticator HTTP service. Let's go into that. Where are you at? There we are. So what we need to do is to add in the forgot methods and add in, I think, register as well. So first thing we're going to do is add a couple of interfaces here. So export interface. And this one's an I forgot payload. So we'll use the same interface for both forgot username and forgot password. All we'll need is the email address, I believe. Next thing we have is that if you're logging in or registering, there are some common elements between the two. So what we're going to do is create a sort of base interface. I login, register, payload. And we'll add into this the password, which is a string, and a username, which is the string. We'll say the login payload extends the iLogin register payload. We'll now remove the common elements, and we'll create another interface, iRegister payload. Also extends the iLogin register payload. Help me out. Perfect. And let's see, what we need to add to it is the email string, email confirm, which is also a string, and password confirm string. Alright, so what we'll do down here is add in our payload, or the methods here. Let me just copy these two in. Let's see. So we have one for the forgot password, takes in an I forgot payload data element and has the success error and finally methods. We're going to do some changing of this stuff here, so I'm not going to worry about not being able to see it right now. And it goes to the forgot password URL, or forgot password. We have the forgot username. I forgot payload goes to the forgot username URL. And while we're at it, we are going to add in the register method. I register payload, and goes to the register URL. Save that. Next, we'll go to the authenticator.component.ts file, and we'll go down to the on-click send method here. And now that we have these different methods in the service, it's time to take advantage or to use them. So we'll come inside the if this dot is login, and say if this dot is subaction forgot password, then we'll say we're going to create a method called forgot password. Like I said, we'll create that here in a second, and then I'm going to return if this dot is subaction forgot username. Same deal, this dot forgot username, and also return. Otherwise we'll do login, and then we'll say else if, maybe if this dot is register, we'll do this dot register, which we'll create in just a second. So let's do forgot password. So private forgot password. This dot authenticator forgot password. So we'll send in the data. We have to send in a success function and send in an error function or method function. And we'll go up here, and the data that we have to send in, of course, is the email, which is this dot control email dot value. Perfect. Let's make sure I don't mess anything up. So if we succeed, then we just say this dot send screen dot success. We'll say request successful. You will be redirected shortly. And if you failed, we'll process the failure and give us an error using the provided email. Excuse me. So that's forgot password. Let's do forgot username, and I'm just going to copy it in. So forgot username, authenticator HTTP service dot forgot username. Send in the email. So it's basically the same information above, except we're just using a different function. Next thing, I'm going to change a little bit the message for login. So login, we're just going to shorten the success message just a little bit. So login successful, you will be redirected shortly. And let's go down to register. Or add register here, I guess. Create a method called register. It calls the HTTP services register method, passes in the email, email confirm, password, password confirm, username, and we have the same sort of success and failure method or functions. Go ahead and save that. And I think we can test a little bit. If we go back to the browser, we'll go to the login. So if we go to forgot username and we just make a send here, well, if we look at the header, we're going to the forgot username endpoint on the account, and it's a post action, and we're sending in the email. You'll see here, we're going to take care of this shortly, but we have this exception. An exception is being thrown here. If we take a look at it in the process error of our HTTP service, the base class has a process error method. And as some reason, you would think that there would be a protection in the case that the response, so if we look at the response, we have nothing. So there's nothing coming back from the server. It's just saying 404. And because nothing is coming back, we're getting this exception. Like I said, we're going to take care of that shortly, but at least the forgot username is working. I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to save it so it'll rebuild it. And we'll go to the forgot password, do the same thing. If we look, we have a forgot password. It's going to the forgot password methods, sending in the email. So that's correct. If we jump over to the register side of things, if we send in a request, you can see that it's going to the register method. It's a post action, has the information that we want to send in. So that's working so far. So let's take care of this exception I was just talking about. So I'm going to go into the services folder, go to the HTTP service. And like I said, it's the process error thing that's having a problem here. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to let, and we're actually going to say that that's an I error response. And we're going to set it down here, but we're going to say if, not if. Doesn't like me. Let's just do a try. So we'll say that JSON is equal to this. If we have a problem, we'll just return. We're going to say let, and just say that JSON is this type. Save that. Just to check to be sure, if we go back to the login method, if we get it, yep, updated, go to forgot username, we send in a request. Now we're just getting the 404 and no exception. Everything's running correctly. So that takes care of that bug. Next thing that we do is create the pages for, or next thing that we're going to do is create the pages for our forgot methods. So I'm going to go into the pages folder inside the account folder, choose add new item, and we'll come down here to razor page, and we're going to call this forgot password. Choose add, and forgot password. I'm just going to copy this thing in here. So you can see we're just setting the title for it. What's going to happen is the user is going to provide their email, send it in. We're going to redirect to this page saying, you know, check your email for the email to reset your password. And let's see what I was going to say. I want this, the URL for getting to this to be forgot-password, not just forgot password all squished together in lowercase. So what I'm going to do here is come down and I'm going to rename the page that we just created. I'm going to rename it to forgot-password. And so the reason that I'm renaming it instead of starting out with that name is that if you attempt to put a dash in the name for the page, depending on how you do it, you'll either get an error saying you can't use a dash, or Visual Studio will convert the dash to an underscore. So I just start off with it being named correctly so that the code behind the class or model has the correct no underscore in the name or anything like that. So we're going to do that. So we did it for forgot password. We need to add new item, razor page again, and we're going to say forgot username. Since I just talked about it, we're going to go ahead and just rename it real quick to forgot-username. And I want it to be same simple text as the other one. Set the title, tell them to check their email for their username. Of course, we won't be resetting it. We'll just be providing it to them. And I think we can go ahead and close those two pages now. And we're going to need to be able to bind to the information that's being sent in with the request. So we're going to go and do what we did before for login. Go to the models folder. There's an account folder. Inside of that account folder, we're going to create a new class. And why it defaults to Xamarin for everything, I don't know. And I'm going to call it account for capital forgot request. Choose add. All we are going to do is need to have the email property here. So we have an email, like I said, email property. We're going to add a little bit of annotations here so that to help with the validation. So we're going to say it's required, and that's an email address. Those are all contained in the system.componentmodel.data annotations namespace. Save that, and we'll go to the account, choose add, new class, complain that it goes to Xamarin again, and take this to call it account register request. Add that, and there's a few more of these properties for it. Same import for the namespace, data annotations. We need an email, required email address. We're going to say for email confirm, we'll say compare it to the email. If it doesn't match, then the error message is the email confirmation email must match. Passwords required. Again, match the password confirmed password and use the same length requirements that we had in the login class. And there are, of course, several other password requirements, and we have the same in the login request. I guess we don't really need validation and login, but there would be other validation requirements for the password. But once we set up identity, then there's a way to set that information within our configuration for identity. So we'll just leave that for later. We'll save that and close both of those request classes. And now it's time to go into the code behinds for our pages. So if I go to the forgot password, we have the forgotpassword.cshtml.cs file, and open that up. We're of course going to want to make a post request to it. So let's create our onPost method and then just import. Come on. There we are. And we'll remove the other namespaces that we don't need. So all we're doing is the very simple thing we've done before. We're going to get the request in. We're simply going to return an OK response with the request in the response so that we can see that the binding is working correctly. So I'll save that. I'll go to the code behind for the username. End up doing the same thing. So we have still the onGet and then the onPost, so the forgot request. Save that. And go to the register code behind. And in here we need to, well, let me just copy it all so it brings in the using statements correctly. So we still have the onGet and again the onPost account register request. The request will be returned in the response. Save that. And I think we're at the point now we can go in and have a look at our, let's go ahead and do a rebuild. I think it already did it for us, but we'll rebuild, go back to the browser and refresh both of them. Start off with the register. So we'll just make the request, take a look. Again, we're going to the register endpoint. Method is post. We're sending in the payload. If we look at the preview, we're receiving the information back. We know because email, password, username all have empty string. If they weren't being bound, they would be null. So we're good there. If we go to login and we go to, let's just do forgot username. We'll even type something in. Send that in. Look at the network. We'll go to the forgot. So we got forgot username, post request, to in a response, sending in the information. And then we click over here and go, what is this? So no matter what I tried, every time I did it, all I would get, this is the actual web page for the GET request for forgot username. So please check your email for your username. And like I said, no matter what I did, it always returns this web page. So I stopped to think about it. It's probably against the design, what we're doing here in the first place. So, the Razor pages are supposed to, I guess, represent a physical page. And it should make sense that we should respond to any of the requests that are made within that page, within the code behind for that page. So in this case, what I'm doing here is I'm using the login page, and I'm saying that when I hit the send button under a certain circumstances, I should go to the post method and the forgot username page, which is probably not what I'm supposed to be doing in the first place. So let's fix this, or at least come up with a workaround for this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in. Well, first thing I'm going to do is close all this stuff so that can make sense of it easier. And first stop here, I guess, is the code behind for the forgot password. And just to remove that onPost method we just created and the namespaces that aren't using statements that aren't required. Same thing for the username. Remove the onPost method. Clean up the using spaces. I'm even going to go all out and go up to the controllers folder, go into the account controller, and we are in fact going to remove this check username availability method because we are going to move that to the register code behind. Perfect. And speak of the devil, first off we'll go to the code behind for login. So we have the onPost method for when we're attempting to log in, and we're going to create a couple more. Let me just copy them in. Stop it. So this one, we're going to call it onPost forgot password. Same deal that we had before. We're going to bind from body the account forgot request. We're going to send back an OK response. This time we're going to send back a property called message so that we know that we're in the forgot password method or action, and we're going to also again send back the request so that we can see the binding is happening correctly. Same deal, onPost forgot username. We'll get a request, send the message forgot username and the request itself. So let me save that. Of course, we need to go into the register code behind, as we do need to add in our on check username availability. So it's basically the exact same code. I guess we have to import the system.threading namespace. So same code as it was in the controller. We were checking, this is checking to make sure that the binding is happening. Let me go ahead and get rid of this. Well, now I have to think about how I can send back an OK response without sending back an object. What is return new OK? Probably just results. Okay, and I guess we'll change this to just a bad request. Bad request result. All right. We'll know that it's binding correctly because we can get a bad request when we send in the proper amount of A's, and otherwise it'll be okay. So we'll know that the binding is happening. Save that. Now, one thing to remember is that when we were doing the get check username or the check username availability in the account controller, we were also checking to make sure that the anti-forgery token was present in the request. I think I even mentioned at the time, it's not even strictly required on the GET request. Our GET request should have no side effects, so they shouldn't change anything. So it shouldn't matter if the token is present. But it does matter when we have these POST requests. We want to make sure that the token is there. And what we're going to do, instead of adding attributes to actions and things, we're going to go to the startup.cs file. Come down here to our configure services, and inside there's a services.add MVC. There are options that we can add to this, and for now what I'm going to do is just add in one to the I think filters. Yep. So we have x.filters.add, and what we want to add in is the new auto validate anti-forgery token attribute. Oops. And we'll go ahead and save that. And I believe when I added in that, it automatically, let me clean this up, automatically included the Microsoft ASP.NET Core.MVC using statement. So you might have to add that using statement in yourself. Like I said, we'll save that. And let's go ahead and rebuild. Your list. Did you rebuild? Come on. Yep, everything's good. Go back to the browser. We're going to refresh here. Actually, I'll refresh both of them. And I guess we can check the username for register. Check the username. So 1, 2, 3, 7, 8 A's. Send that in. Our response is a 40. Oh, never mind. We'll check that later. Forget that. Forget we even tried. And the login here is going to work. So let's just send in a request to log in. Actually, we should send in a valid request. Doesn't help to send in stuff that's invalid in the first place. So let's add in valid information. Send that in. And so we're receiving a 200 response with that. Let's go into Visual Studio. I did this the opposite way last time. Go into the HTTP service base class, and what we'll do is just comment out our token. Return back to the browser here. I'm going to just use the information that we sent in the previous request. So we saw it was a 200. So there's the password that we sent in. There's the username that we're sending in. And now we're getting back a 400 with the exact same information. So we're having the problem as a result of not including our validation token. So that part's still working. And let's see. All right, next thing to do here. So we need to be able to say what method to use, right? The login still works because we're not, by default it's using the onPost method for a post request to this login page, which makes perfect sense. But now we have these additional onPost methods, and we need to be able to say this is the handler that we want to use. So we're going to do that by once again returning to the HTTP service. And the first thing I'm going to do is include an import statement for the low-is-nil. And what I want to do is we have to send in some additional information on our get and post request. And the amount, I'm tired of having all of these arguments, comma separated arguments being sent in. We'd have to add another one. So should have done this in the first place. What we're going to do is create a new interface. So this interface is going to contain all of the information that we have currently for our get and post request, the URL, data, success, error, and finally. Those are all there. And we're adding in an additional optional one called Razor Page Handler. It's going to be a string. Like I said, it's optional. So what we're going to do, I think let's change the do promise one first. So let's scroll down here to do promise. And what do promise is going to do is instead of taking in all of this gobbledygook, it's going to take in the observable, and it's going to take in a request, which is the type of the HTTP request that we just created. So of course we have to modify this a bit. So instead of success, it'll be request.success. I'm going to change that statement so if undefined or no, we're just going to change and use the low-is-null for request.finally. If that's false, then execute the finally function, passing in the response. Same thing down here. It's request.error with the same low-dash statement. Low-is-nil. If that's false, use it. So now we have to fix the actual requests themselves. So instead of all of this stuff here, we're going to get in a request, which is an HTTP request. We're going to have to modify it just a little bit here. And so the way that we're going to tell ASP.NET that which handler to use, we have to include a query string parameter to it. And if we remember how we're creating our URL with the query string, we have this URL with query string function. So what I want to do here is I'm going to say const data is equal to request.data, and I'm going to cast it to any. Now I'll say if low-is-nil, and I'm going to check for the request.razor page handler. If that's equal to false, So there is something there. What we'll do is we'll just simply say data.handler. So the key value pair for telling ASP.NET which handler to use is the key should be handler, and it should have a value which is the string request.razorPageHandler. And that string that we're going to send in is the name of the handler minus the verb, so minus the on post or on get. So in this case, it would just be forgot password. So if we return back to our HTTP service, what we now have to do is to send in, so we have this URL is request.url, and of course the data is the data object up here. And we can get rid of the last bit here and just give it the request. And that should clear it up. It does. So we need to do the same thing for the post. So it's a request, HTTP request. In this case, right, we aren't just creating a query string. We weren't doing anything with the query string originally. So what we'll do now is we'll say const URL, and that's equal to low-is nil. So once again, we'll check for the request.razorPageHandler. So if that is nil, then the URL is just going to be the request.url. If on the other hand it is not, what we want to do is this URL with query string. We'll pass in the request.url, and we'll just create the object that we need here. Like I said, what we need is a handler for the key, and the value will be the request.razorPageHandler. We have the URL that's being passed in here. That will be request.data, and again the request. And now we got a little green check mark up there. We're all good to go for the base class. Of course, we have errors abound in the Authenticator HTTP service, but we're going to fix those here. All right, so one of the first things we're going to do here, so we no longer need these separate URLs. Everything goes to either the login or the register page. The information that's passed in is still the same information, so all we have to do is change how we're using it. So let me just copy this in. Of course, all we're doing is just sending information inside of an object, so it's the same data error finally. Again, the RazorPageHandler in this case is, so it's on, on the page it's on get check username availability, so we just put in the check username availability, sending it to the register URL. Forgot password. Same data that's getting sent in gets sent to the forgot password handler on the login page. Same thing for, which one is this? Forgot username. So we forgot the username, and I guess I lied when I said I was going to do something to make this stuff more readable. So let's just move this stuff down. I can read it on the screen. And so we have login. Change this. Post and register. Oops. Don't copy over login. Put it down there in the register. Save that. And I guess let's go back to the browser now. I don't remember where I don't think I changed anything on the back end. So let's go to network. Let's go to the account, or to register. Let's put in our, let's close that request. Put in our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 A's. Send that in. So we've got a 400. Let's add another A to it. Send that in. That one comes back at 200, so the binding is working correctly there. Go back to login. What we needed to check was the forgot stuff, so send it in. Login, we can see that it's going to the login. Handler is forgot username, sending in. It's being sent back to us. Just to be thorough, do the same thing for forgot password. Again, goes to the right spot. Forgot password, sending us the stuff back. So that is all working the way that we want it to. And actually, it looks like that will bring us to the end of this video. What do we do next? I do not know. Perhaps we'll start adding in the identity information, but I haven't made up my mind yet, so I guess we'll both be surprised when the time comes. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. I know that your time is valuable. If you liked the video, please subscribe to our channel and click the thumbs up button, as well as share the video with your friends. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. And once again, thank you, and I will talk to you in the next video.